Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I'm your Loremaster, here on the end of our treasure vault voyage. We have seen nations, gods, and treasures galore, but this week is not about material wealth. This week is the hour of the Kobold, aka another ancestry video before I do my favorite gnomes. It will happen, I promise. But with the recent friendly tour guide of the treasure vault, how could I say no? First, the basics. Where do kobolds come from? Well, they consider themselves dragons, so there are a few tales that tie them to the meaner beasts. Some claim they were the first great brood of dragons fertilized after the chromatic or metallic, made by the remainder of the souls created when Apsu and the Hawk had their great fight. Others that they were made by the Hawk, by his tears shed after the battle. Some even claim that they were the firstborn, hidden away under the earth until the Hawk made half of them the first dragons, leaving the other half biding their time just below the surface. Regardless of the truth, do not immediately recognize the greatness of kobolds. It is a mistake they'll never let you live down. Kobolds are lizard-like creatures, but different from lizard folks. They are highly flexible, agile, and have a second transparent lid which protects the highly sensitive eyes from dust. A kobold's horns, scales, and all 54 teeth are continuously growing, and therefore are quite sharp. They are, in their own words, a type of dragon, though how dragon-like they actually are has always varied. Sometimes they grow wings, or can breathe elements, but mostly it is something you just doubt and walk away. That said, one thing they do have to back up their claims is their scales. They're mostly taking the coloration of true dragons, especially chromatic and metallic, but they can be connected to any draconic tradition, just with certain dragons already being a more common sight. Which brings us to our first side tangent, the part of the show where we look at things differently. We talked about the colors kobolds usually take. Our information gives us some rarer traits. Outside of those matching dragons, we have been confirmed sightings of gray, yellow, orange, purple, and pink kobolds. And while yellow and orange, and even maybe gray, can be attributed to just being off-color of some dragons in the chromatic metallic commonality or just outside it, purple is harder to match. And there are certainly no pink or pink-colored dragons, on Galarian that is, and in the entirety of the Pathfinder Starfinder canon. There might be more to the universe than that in our current philosophies, or tabletop canon as a whole at the moment, but in terms of how kobolds work on the inside, they are omnivorous, and they have a slow metabolism that they require only a small amount to eat or drink. Part of why they are able to work so long without any need to stop. They also are fertile from the time of adulthood, at the age of 3, until their deaths, producing an egg around every 20 to 25 days. Kobolds work in tribal structures, and work to put the safety and growth of the tribe before anything else. That said, they are not known for being self-sacrificing, and would rather see someone else sacrifice for the greater good than themselves. After all, they are one of the most useful of the tribe. How would it even survive without them there? That said, they do tend to work together well, at their best being as clockwork. But on the other hand, their culture does not tend to have well, it does tend to have a high mortality rate, and therefore kobolds do not really get attached to others. After all, there's not a high chance that the person next to you will be there tomorrow. Can't get too invested. And going deeper into the kobold mind, the first and foremost is always to survive. Despite bragging that they are dragons, they know how weak they are, and are hyper cautious at all times. They know how to sneak out of danger, how to see it before anyone else does, and how to effectively grovel when the situation calls for it. And of course, the greatest skill of a kobold, they are obsessed with traps. And mining, but mostly traps. Both come from being designed to live underground. But trap making is a skill that kobolds have which allows them to make the most of their environment always. And it can be a handful for adventurers. After all those traps and dungeons had to have come from somewhere. Which brings us to our second side tangent. The faith of kobolds. Why is this a side tangent? Well, I mean, listing the gods are one thing. Asmodeus and his archdevils for domination, the hawk because dragons, Nethys for magic. But like cities, kobolds have built their faith to function to the kobold way of life. Both traps and ambushes are things of worship to them. And one of the reasons that Adurifka, the demon lord of traps, is counted among their most popular deities. In addition, radiation, because of where they live, deep in the earth, surrounded by objects that we'll be talking about later, radiation is something kobolds understand more than most, especially with how useful it can be in traps. Now then, where can you find kobolds? Well, anywhere in the upper Darklands is the easy answer. Otherwise, the answer varies. Chromatic and metallic colored ones live throughout the Inner region at the very least. Those that look like Imperial dragons appear in Tian Sha. Plain or primal ones can appear anywhere, especially if eggs are experiencing some kind of danger of planar energy. Or both. Esoteric are extremely rare, to the point of being considered a bad omen, and often end up as exiles. Though we do have interesting things in Starfinder, which qualify for Side Tangent 3. So, Golarion is missing, and many of its native species as well, including kobolds, right? Well, Witchwhoopers managed to bring various objects of lost Golarion from an alternate dimension, and with them, kobolds. These alternate dimension kobolds may or may not be the same kind of creature from Golarion. There are some fables which amount to them that they were once full dragons before being compressed to kobold size in this dimension. Regardless of what they actually are, the kobolds spread out across the Pact Worlds and found themselves places to live which conveniently seem to have always been there, waiting for them. Needless to say, Witchwhoopers are incredibly common among the kobolds. When it comes to kobolds and their relationships with other creatures, there are a few standouts. Typical allies of the kobolds include trading bullets to dig, raising giant ants and slurks as mounts, and using myceloids and quickwoods as guards. And of course, kobolds really like dragons. For enemies, kobolds bump heads the most with dwarves, goblins, and the occasional smurf neblin. Cave giants and rock trolls also fight them for territory. And purple worms like to have them for snacks. Now, coming up to last, we have a few facts about kobolds that I find incredibly interesting. First, kobolds have an incredible sense of smell. Might not be something one notices right away, considering the kind of smells they need to put up with, but kobolds deal with smells like other creatures deal with flavors, which combined with their ability to eat anything that I believe I mentioned before. Either way, nauseating or sickening a kobold is at times tougher than slaying a dragon. And then there is their spatial awareness. Kobolds are known for their twisting, unable to be mapped sets of tunnels which continuously double back on themselves. However, kobolds will always be able to find their way despite this. They fully know where they are in a three-dimensional space, an ability which allows them to not only defend themselves, but have any who would dare attack them become hopelessly lost. Now, before we go, we have a final side tangent. As promised earlier, let me tell you what Blightburn is. Blightburn is a kind of crystal found in the Darklands. It is green, gives off radiation, causes one to get incredibly sick from being too close to it. It's radioactive material, just in crystal form. But either way, it can be used as a useful tool, especially in kobold traps, due to it being a strong source of poison damage. Yes, radiation counts as poison damage. Wild, right? Also, who does not want to be slightly vile sometimes and give your enemies radiation sickness? Well, one more side note. The radiation also messes with teleportation, so that's a way to shut that down as well. And that is the end of this video, which also brings us to the end of my vaguely connected videos to Treasure Vault. Now it is time to prepare for the next puzzle release, which I would have been making videos on if I did not already make Firebrand related videos last year. Ahead of the curve on that front on my end, so back to regular scheduled random topics for me. Whatever is coming next, I say as if it's not already scheduled. I hope to see you next time.